Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, community members, councillors, officers. Welcome to East Gippsland Shire's council meeting of Tuesday, 24th of August 2021. East Gippsland Shire Council live streams, records and publishes its meetings via webcasting on YouTube, East Gippy TV, to enhance the accessibility of its meetings to the broader East Gippsland community. These recordings are also archived and available for viewing by the public or used for publicity or information purposes. At the appropriate time during the meeting, any members of the gallery who are addressing the council will have their image, comments or submissions recorded. No other person has the right to record council meetings unless approval has been granted by the chair. The Victorian Government has amended the COVID-19 Omnibus Emergency Measures and Other Acts Amendment Act 2020 that enables council meetings to be conducted via electronic means, that's video conferencing, until the 26th of April 2022. The Minister for Local Government reissued the Ministerial Good Practices Guidelines for virtual meetings on the 20th of October 2020, outlining the provisions relating to the Local Government Act 2020 that allow councillors to attend council meetings electronically, and the requirement where council meetings are open to the public will be satisfied where the meeting is live streamed. The amendments do not preclude councillors from attending a meeting in person in the council chambers. Members of the public are invited to view the council meeting live streamed by following the link on the council's website or Facebook page. A member's or councillor's attendance can only be recorded as present when the member can confirm that they meet all of the three following: that they can hear proceedings, that they can see other members in attendance and can be seen by other members, and they can be heard to speak. Councillors must confirm all of the above conditions to be noted as present for the meeting. A quorum will not be made if these conditions are not met, and the meeting will be adjourned until a quorum is met or postponed if a quorum cannot be met. If technical difficulties are encountered by council during the meeting, including with the live streaming, we will adjourn until resolution of the issue or postpone to a later time and or date. I will now confirm with each councillor in turn that they can see, hear and be heard by each other, and to note assurance from each that the location they are participating from is secure to ensure deliberations are confidential. And I can confirm that I hope that you can see, hear and understand me, and I can assure you that I am in a confidential location. So, Councillor Stowe, can you hear?
Yes.
Can you see the other members?
I can.
And we can hear you, and are you participating in a secure location?
I am.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Allen, can you confirm all of those, that you can see, hear and we can hear you, and that you're in a safe and secure location?
I can, Deputy Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Buckley, can you confirm that you're in a secure location, that you can see and hear us and that we can hear you?
I can confirm that.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Van Deel, can you assure us that you can see and hear us and that we can hear you and that you are in a secure location?
Oh my goodness, I'm the first one who did that. I can confirm all of the above.
Thank you, Councillor. I'm sure you won't be the last. You're certainly not the first to suffer the microphone failure. That's okay. Councillor Crook, can you confirm that you can see and we can hear you and we can see you and that you're in a secure location?
Yes, I confirm all those conditions.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor White, good evening. Can you confirm that you can see and hear us, we can see you and that you're in a secure location?
Yes, I certainly can confirm that. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Gershon, can you see and hear us, we can see you, and can you confirm that you are in a secure location?
Yes, I confirm all of that, Councillor Reeves. Thank you.
Thank you, councillors. I think that I have covered off everyone there on my list, so we have undertaken that procedural matter. Item 1.1 is the recognition of traditional custodians, councillors. East Gippsland Shire acknowledges the Gunai Kurnai, Monero and Bidawal peoples as the traditional custodians of the land that encompass East Gippsland Shire. We pay our respects to all Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islanders people living in East Gippsland, our elders past and present. Thank you, councillors. We're moving through our procedural matters now. And 1.2 is apologies. And we do have an apology from Councillor Yuri, the Mayor. Thanks, CEO.
Yes, correct. Correct, Chair.
Thank you. Declarations of conflict of interest. Are there any declarations, councillors? None noted, CEO. Thank you. Councillors, we're moving on to the confirmations of the minutes. And there were minutes of the meeting on Tuesday, the 3rd of August, I think, CEO. Is that correct?
I believe that's correct.
And there were closed council minutes and open council minutes at that particular meeting. Do we need to confirm those both?
Need to confirm the minutes, correct.
Thank you. Councillor Gratian, thank you. You moving that?
I'm moving the motions.
Thank you. Councillor White seconding it. Thank you, councillors. Can I put that to the vote? All those in favour? Thank you, councillors. Carried unanimously. Thanks, councillors. Let me just scroll through my agenda. There may be a bit of this tonight. And I have just lost what I was looking for. Thank you. So item 1.5 is the next meeting. The next council meeting is on Tuesday, 14th of September, to be held at the Corporate Centre, 273 Main Street, Bairnsdale, commencing 6 p.m, or remotely if we are still locked down, I dare say, but I'm sure that will be determined at the time. Item 1.6 is requests for leave of absence.
There are none, Chair. Thank you.
Thank you, CEO. Item 1.7 is open forum, petitions, questions of council or public submissions.
So, Chair, we have no petitions, no questions of council that have been raised with me. We do have one public submission, and that person will speak at 5.3.1 about the item of Kings Cove Boulevard.
Yeah, thank you for that. Understood. Item 2, councillors' notices of motion. I suspect there aren't any from what I can see, CEO.
There are none, and there is no deferred business.
Deferred business. Terrific. Councillors and delegates' reports. So, councillors, this is an opportunity for you to share your busy lives with our community. So I'm happy to move around the room, and I'm going to start with Councillor Stowe.
Thank you, Mark. Look, it's been a COVID 3 weeks, actually. It's been fairly quiet by council terms. I was fortunate enough the other night to be invited by the Mayor to attend the East Gippsland Business Awards, the launch of them at Nicholson Nursery, Nicholson Winery at least. And the Mayor did a great job in launching them, and we can look forward to the awards happening in the next few weeks. And I heard them advertised on radio today, so keep your eyes open for them.
Oh, thanks, Councillor. That's terrific. Councillor Allen.
Thank you, Councillor Reeves. The only thing I've got to report this for this 3-week period is I was on leave in Warrnambool during the week, and in my travels I came across the forum, which was subject of much information and discussion at the homeless, the foyer, sorry, was the name of the place, at the homeless forum that we had a couple of weeks ago. And I was impressed by the size of the building, and talking to people around the district, I was very impressed to hear that it's a treasured part of the community now, even though at the time it was built, there was a strong opposition. So that was something, you know, that was made my time away worthwhile.
Oh, thanks, Councillor. I appreciate you sharing that. Councillor Buckley.
Yes, thank you, Deputy Mayor. I was re-elected to the Timber Towns Board, which I dodged becoming the deputy chair on that most important duty for Timber Towns for Victoria. Only just by a breath of good luck, because being a young member of it, I felt that I wasn't quite suited to the position just yet, but have been very inspired by the work that Timber Towns is doing to ensure that we are going to get the best results for our timber industry into the future. And also today we had some really robust, healthy discussion around the impacts that that COVID is having on our community, and we're looking into being able to address that matter and reach out to the Premier so that we can advocate for what is a very difficult time for lockdown in our community. So I was really pleased to hear the views around the table and the unanimous support by all councillors and the CEO and our corporation, that how we are deeply concerned and connected to our community at this time. So a lot of work to be done, and we've got a draft before us for a wellbeing plan that will be enacted over the next 4 years. So I'm pretty excited about that. So even though we are not able to get out socially, we're still working very hard. So well done, team. That's it.
Thanks, Councillor Buckley. Good words. Councillor Van Diggel.
Hi, so same as other councillors, it's been a bit of a quieter 3 weeks than I would have liked. A lot of things I was looking forward to were cancelled. Two things that did go ahead were I had the chance to meet with the Clontarf Foundation online 2 weeks ago, just to tell us about what they're doing and I guess how council can support them moving into the future. So for those who don't know, the Clontarf Foundation aims to improve the education, discipline, life skills, self-esteem and employment prospects of young Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander men in East Gippsland, and their base is at Bairnsdale Secondary College. So it's just great to find out what they're doing currently in East Gippsland and how we can support just really realistic things like, L2P, the young people need mentors and drivers to help them obtain their license. So just little things that we can do to maybe support them. So I'm happy to continue looking into how we can support them going into the future. It was a very short meeting, just half an hour. So I look forward to having that relationship with them in the future. And then luckily last week we were able to attend the homelessness sleep out. So Councillor Crook and I were able to attend that. That was obviously moved from a few weeks ago where a lot of the councillors were available to attend. And this time Councillor Crook and I were able to attend, and we'll brief the councillors on that soon. But that was run by the Salvation Army, and there was a lot of volunteers from the Salvation Armies and the Vinnies as well. So Kath McMahon, who presented to council a few weeks ago, and we were able to sit around the campfire for a couple of hours and just talk about the issues facing people in East Gippsland. I can't remember the statistic exactly, but Tom might be able to chime in later. But I believe that since the start of July, the Salvos have seen 148, I believe the statistic was, people who needed some additional help, whether it was, food or accommodation. So that's an alarming statistic. And we had the chance to talk around the campfire about ideas and solutions to some of these problems. And I look forward to working with councillors on seeing how we can support the homeless community here, and not even the homeless, but those at risk of. So that's my update.
Yeah, thanks, Councillor. Much appreciated. Thanks for your work. Councillor Crook.
Thanks, councillors. Yes, look, I attended the sleep out for the homeless with Councillor Van Diggel last Friday, as she mentioned. And look, we did sit around the campfire, and that wasn't a metaphor. We were actually sitting around the campfire together at one stage. There was a sort of formal section of the evening where we had an address from several of their officers that painted a pretty grim picture of homelessness in our region, and really demonstrated to me really clearly that this is an issue that is very serious and very much needs to be addressed. And it's not just an issue. These are, as they made the point, these are people we're talking about here. So it was good to get an insight into the statistics and the demand, but it was even more meaningful to actually be able to sit down around the fire and engage in some really deep and meaningful conversations with those agencies and those community groups who volunteer so much time to help people much less fortunate than ourselves. So I too look forward to our council helping in that space and helping those people who really are very much in need. I also attended the Australian Coastal Council's committee meeting recently, and one of the items discussed there was the consultation program being conducted to update the National Climate Resilience and Adaptation Strategy being done by the federal government. Committee members expressed concern that the outline of the strategy did not address mitigation measures and that it really didn't refer to the need for resources to assist local councils to adequately respond to projected climate change impacts. So the federal government department is inviting feedback from that organisation, the Coastal Councils Association, and so we will be seeking to make a submission to that process. In the view of the committee, a coherent strategy aimed at setting up a roadmap towards national climate resilience requires both adaptation and mitigation measures to be incorporated as co-joint elements in a coordinated effort to address projected climate change impacts. It's no good just having adaptation measures to the changes that we're already experiencing. We need further mitigation. And it's difficult to imagine how these elements will be fully effective if they were addressed separately. So we believe they really need to be addressed together. So we'll be making those points very clear to the federal government, stressing the need that councils have a key role to play. And in fact, coastal councils are at the forefront of climate change impacts, including the more frequent severe weather events, coastal erosion and inundation. And we believe that the sector therefore understands the need for a climate resilience and adaptation strategy that both links the need for adaptation and mitigation. So I look forward to reporting further to the council on those efforts. That's all from me. Thank you.
Thanks, Councillor Crook. Thanks for your work there. It's most important. Councillor White.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. Just obviously the same as everybody else, COVID's causing us lots of drama, but I did actually attend on the 9th of August a planning mediation session regarding an application for a billboard at New Morella, which got a number of objections. It was Councillor Greason also attended, and we couldn't come to an agreement between the parties. Unfortunately, it was a very very good meeting. You know, there was no animosity. People spoke their mind about what they wanted and what they didn't want, but at the end of the day, we couldn't come to any agreement. So therefore, in the near future, this will have to come to the council for a resolution. And beyond that, you know, I would believe that no matter which way a vote goes in that situation, we probably will see another item go to VCAT. So yes, just as typical of how we're operating, it was done online. So yeah. Anyway, that's modern technology. At least we can get things done. So that was my couple of weeks. Not much else to report. Thank you.
They're important matters to have consultation around. Thanks, Councillor White. Councillor Greason. And you're muted. Not anymore. No, you're still muted. Here we go. Take two.
Thank you. I attended two meetings in this last 3 weeks, one being LARJAC, which is the Local Aboriginal Justice Advisory Committee. As usual, it was very well attended. Tammy Bundle, who's the CEO of Mudgee, talked about a new initiative there where they had a live court case at the health service, which made a big difference to the local people. They didn't have to travel to Melbourne, and so it was very supportive. We had a presentation from Michelle Hook and Blade Larkins from Youth Affairs Council Victoria on reshaping our future and talking about family violence, talking about creating culturally safe places for the communities to come into and improving the Aboriginal people's confidence in the court system. So I think that was the main things there. The VLGA wealth building webinar was really excellent. It was very well attended. I was particularly impressed with Monica Barone's presentation. She's the CEO of the City of Sydney, and she was talking about Sustainable Sydney 2017 to 2030 and their vision, targets and actions, and how they're going to be weaving community wealth building into all of their places and all of their overarching frameworks. She had some very good examples. And also she mentioned that all 33 councils in Sydney now collaborate on wastewater data, green waste data, etc., which means they can all share data and do analyses and save funds. She talked about supporting their local Aboriginal organisations to grow so that they can compete in the same way as every other industry can when putting out to tender, when jobs are being put out to tender. And she talked about, you know, protecting local business and local jobs, so creating economic security for people in the town. So that was the main thing I got out of it. Thank you.
Thanks, Councillor Greeson. Councillors, thanks for all your work around the community, even in these challenging times. I similarly have been locked down and unable to do very much. So my simple message tonight to the community members watching is that, I think we need to recognise that these are really challenging times and it's difficult during this current lockdown. And I think that we need to be kind and gentle on each other and maybe look out for each other. So it could be a good time to just ring that somebody who you haven't spoken to for a while and make sure they're okay, they're connected and being looked after and not alone. I think it's also important, councillors, that we are reminded about the importance of adhering to the current tougher restrictions. The longer we can do, the better we can do that, the quicker we're out of this. I think it's also worth remembering that many of our staff in the Shire will be out and about performing work as essential workers. But by the same token, there's a lot of work that we can't do and because of those restrictions. And any community members that have any queries or inquiries about the level and extent of our services should check our website or feel free to call us on 5153 9500. That's important that our community understands what we can and can't do and what we're able to do to keep our community moving along. Thanks, councillors, for your reports. We're moving on to item 5, officer reports, and item 5.1 under assets and environment. 5.1.1 is a report titled City Power Partnership. And I'm expecting Ms. Weigel there. Is that who's going to join us and talk to this?
Thank you, Deputy Mayor.
Thank you.
Councillors, before you tonight is the report seeking your endorsement to become a local government partner within the city's power partnership. The reason why this membership is coming to council is that the membership commits the organisation to make 5 action pledges to tackle climate change, and pledges are usually considered by council. The City Power Partnership is Australia's largest local government climate network with over 140 local government members. Membership is free and brings with it the many benefits, including access to resources, collaboration opportunities, information sharing, free conference attendance, and access to carbon monitoring tools that council currently pays for. Rather than a membership fee, the membership requires council to make 5 climate change pledges within 6 months of joining. As outlined in this report, there are a range of categories that councils can pledge against, and officers believe that our current effort in this area provides us with pledge opportunities. That is, we don't necessarily have to develop new actions or activities. Given our work in the area of climate change and the many benefits this membership brings, this report seeks council's endorsement to join City's Power Partnership. Thank you, Deputy Mayor. I'm happy to take any questions.
Yeah, thank you, Fiona. Councillors, are there any questions? Councillor Van Diggle, thank you.
Thanks, Fiona. In the report, it obviously says that to be part of this, you need to partake in 5 different actions. So obviously joining this doesn't have a cost, but what would be the financial implications of those 5, I guess, actions that we like? Are they expensive? I'd be curious about the financial implications of this. I mean, I think it's a great idea, but I'd be interested.
Thanks for the question, Councillor. Through you, Deputy Mayor. The ones that we've identified are ones that we think that Council will already be undertaking. So they do come with a cost, but that cost has already been budgeted for and considered. Many of them also bring with them cost benefits. So, for example, we're looking at rolling out the remaining energy efficient lighting throughout the Shire, and that will bring savings to Council over time. That's got a if Council was paying for that out of Council cash, that would have a payback in under 5 years, payback period. We actually have sourced some grant funding for that, so we start to make those savings immediately. So there's a number of those actions, and as I said, they do come with a cost, you're right, but the cost has already been budgeted for because we've selected actions that we're already undertaking or are imminently going to undertake. Thank you.
Good. Thanks, Ms. Weigel. Are there any other questions, councillors? It's looking very quiet. Councillors, as a recommendation, do I have a motion? Councillor Crook, thank you. Do I have a seconder? Councillor Greason, thank you. Would the mover, Councillor Crook, like to speak to the motion?
Yeah, certainly. Look, I think this is a fantastic opportunity for us to tap into a nationwide network of information and resources. As was mentioned, there's over 140 councils have already signed up to this initiative. We are bound legally and morally to act on climate change. We are already doing that. This will strengthen both our capacity and our ability to move in this space. As Ms. Weigel identified, many of the actions that we'll take as a part of our pledges in signing on to this, which I recommend that we do, we're actually already undertaking, and there are significant savings to our council in doing so, such as the light bulbs, but also in buying renewable energy. We're going to find in time that the cost of non-renewable energy is going to become exorbitant, and we are already moving towards supplying more and more of our own energy, and in fact buying 100% renewable energy already. So we're already doing a lot of the things that this pledge asks us to do, and in signing up, it's going to give us access to both the cutting edge information and further partnership development opportunities with other councils and other entities right around the country and in fact around the world. So I think it's a great opportunity. It's basically cost free or cost negative, or will in fact save us money in the long run. So I commend the motion.
Thanks, Councillor. Councillor Greason, did you want to speak to the motion?
Just to add, there's not much I can add to what Ms. Weigel and Councillor Crook have already said, but I will just say that it's entirely consistent with our council plan, which requires us to reduce our own and communities' carbon emissions. So I think, it's very much needing to be supported.
Thanks, councillors. Councillors, is the motion opposed? Thank you. Would any other councillors like to speak to the motion? I'm checking my list. I can't see any hands or waving. Thank you, councillors. Then I'll put the motion to the vote. All those in favour? Those against? Looks like it's unanimous, CEO, I think, from what we've seen. Thank you, councillors.
Thank you.
Right, we're moving on to item 5.1.2, which is the adoption of East Gippsland Shire Council Asset Management Policy. And Fiona, is you in the seat again? Thank you.
It is. I'm very happy to be in the seat for this one, Deputy Mayor.
Right.
Councillors, before you is a report seeking your endorsement to adopt a revised asset management policy for Council. As you know, East Gippsland Shire Council is custodian to infrastructure assets with a value that far exceeds $800 million. And these assets assist to deliver a wide range of services to our community. They generally have a long life cycle of up to 100 years, and then therefore need to be managed responsibly to maintain their functionality, achieve best value through their life, and minimise risk, and therefore be able to be used to sustain community safety, amenity, and well-being. The asset management policy before you tonight provides strategic direction for the management of all assets owned and controlled, managed or maintained by East Gippsland Shire Council. The policy establishes an asset management framework to inform the development of an asset management strategy and asset management plans, and details their relationship with other planning documents that Council generates. The framework is a key component of the overall integrated planning framework of Council, with a focus on our service delivery as a driver for asset and infrastructure, and in ways that promote alignment between the financial capacity and the service aspirations of our organisation. A major update to the asset management policy has been undertaken, and this is presented to you as revision number 7. The review has been undertaken to clarify the objectives that I've just mentioned, and in response to the requirements of the Local Government Act 2020. A version of the current asset management policy, revision number 6, is also provided as attachment 2, so you can see the changes between the two.
Yeah.
Also present this evening is Tom Weatherall, Manager of Assets and Projects, who has been the driver behind this policy and can answer any questions. Thank you.
Absolutely. Thanks, Ms. Weigel. So, councillors, are there any questions of either officers? There's a comprehensive report we've seen, and as noted, $800 million worth or more of assets that are managed. Councillors, surely there's a question or a clarification. Well, congratulations, officers. You've really provided enough information that we can move on. So we have a recommendation in front of us, councillors. Just go back to it. Thank you. Excuse me, scrolling. Do we have a motion? Councillor Crooks jumped in there, thank you. And Councillor Buckley, was it you? Thank you, seconding. Thanks very much. Terrific. Councillor Crook, would you like to speak to the motion?
Well, look, just simply to say that people are often questioning how the Shire looks after the services that we provide and the assets that we own on behalf of the community. And the answer is this framework. It's incredibly complicated. As Fiona alluded to, it covers over $800 million worth of assets. It includes our, in excess of 3,000 kilometres worth of our road network, our bridges, our libraries, numerous other assets. It's a critically important framework for us to have. And I think the staff have done an excellent job in preparing it thus far. It's a requirement under the Local Government Act, so it's not in fact optional. But we've certainly stepped up to the plate on this occasion, and I thoroughly recommend the work that's been done.
Yeah, thanks, Councillor. Councillor Buckley, did you want to speak as well?
Yes, thank you, Deputy Mayor. I think the purpose is very clear to this policy, and it provides clear direction on our asset management, and most important, that we ensure the community's faith in the process of delivery. And it gives a guide to the development of the council's asset management strategy. So I'm confident in seconding this motion.
Great, thank you. Councillors, is the motion opposed? Thanks, councillors. Would anybody else like to speak to the motion? Thank you. I'm just giving a little delay because there may be a little delay in what we're doing. Well, councillors, in that case, I will put the motion to the vote. All those in favour? Thank you, councillors. We're carried unanimously. You catch that, Mr. CEO? I think you did. Councillors, we're moving on to section 5.2. Business Excellent, and 5.2.1 Public Interest Disclosure Policy. That's where we are in the agenda. Thank you. And I think Mr. Cannizzaro has joined us.
I have. Thank you, Deputy Mayor. Councillors, before you is a report titled the Public Interest Disclosure Policy, which is seeking adoption of the policy in line with the Public Interest Disclosure Act of 2012. The key points of the report for Council to consider are, firstly, the main changes between the existing policy and the revised draft policy before you are the inclusion of the Ombudsman as a receiver of disclosures that relate to councillors and the realignment of roles and responsibilities, particularly those of the Public Interest Disclosure Coordinator and the Public Interest Disclosure Officer with their functional responsibilities at Council. In addition, the role of the Welfare Manager has also been included to provide welfare support to the disclosure if considered appropriate by the Chief Executive Officer. Also in line with the changes, the Public Interest Disclosure Procedure has been reviewed, which also identified the need to make some minor amendments to the policy to improve the clarity about the process and also ensure consistency across both the policy and the procedure. Also, the policy was revised to ensure there was consistency with terminology, which you'll have noticed. Also, the Public Interest Disclosure Act provides for a person to make a disclosure of improper conduct or detrimental action by council and council staff to the Independent Broad-Based Anti-Corruption Commission, otherwise known as IBAC, or the Ombudsman or certain council staff. Council is also required to have a policy and make that information available on our website. And also the procedure that I referred to earlier is transferring the policy requirement into a requirement to under the guidance of the Chief Executive Officer. And that will enable improved flexibility for any amendments to the procedure and to act quite quickly and swiftly on any advice from IBAC. So we can do that on a timely basis. The procedure and the policy will also be available on Council's website as part of our public transparency policy, which will assist members of the community who wish to make a disclosure. Also present today is the Manager of Governance, Bojane da Costa, who is available to respond to any questions of a technical nature that you may have. The report and its recommendations are presented for your consideration, councillors. Thank you, Deputy Mayor.
Thanks, Mr. Cannizzaro. So the attachments show us there's a disclosure policy and disclosure procedure and marked up versions there, councillors, and there's an opportunity to seek any clarification from the officers. Councillor Greason.
Thank you very much, Councillor Reeves. I think this is a very important policy. I have a question. Is there legal protection built in? I'm not assuming by council, but legally with the state government legislation for a person making a disclosure in the event that they might be sued?
I'll take that question. Thank you, Councillor Greason. So in relation to disclosure, people that are disclosing a PID and it's confirmed as an appropriate disclosure are protected from detrimental action against them under the Act.
Thank you, Mr. Costa. Councillor Greason, does that answer the question?
Yes, that's exactly what I wanted to know. Thank you.
Right, terrific. Councillors, are there any other questions of officers? It's an important piece of legislation, so here's an opportunity for clarification. Just wait for one more moment in case there's any delays. Thank you, Councillor Buckley. Your question.
Yeah, it's just around some clarification in regards to the changes to the roles that have been made in this policy. If you could just clarify that to me and what that means and how the changes have taken place.
Absolutely.
Mr. Costa.
Absolutely. Thank you, Councillor Buckley, for the question. So the roles internally from a management perspective have identified that obviously now there's a manager of governance being myself, and I've taken the role as the public interest disclosure coordinator. So I will assist from an oversight perspective when we get these PIDs come through to council. There's also, as Mr. Cannizzaro alluded to, the inclusion of now the Ombudsman, who takes a role that can also take PIDs from just being IBAC initially. The Ombudsman can now also assess them. If it's in relation to a councillor complaint, it will go directly external and management play no role in that. If it's internal and it's staff, we will initially assess in accordance with the Act. If we determine from a management myself in liaison with the CEO determine that it is an appropriate PID, it will also then be given to the external, either IBAC or the Ombudsman, within 28 days of actually receiving it. If we determine that it is not an appropriate, we will then provide that advice back to the disclosure.
Thank you very much, Mr. Costa.
Thanks, Councillor. Are there any other questions, councillors? Councillor Buckley, you've still got your hand up waving, so it's all wave backward. Councillors, a recommendation in front of us. Do I have a motion? Councillor Crook. Thank you. And seconded, Councillor Greason. Councillor Crook, did you want to speak to that motion?
Yes, thank you, Deputy Mayor. Look, the Act and the policy that flows from it really allows a person to make a disclosure of improper conduct or detrimental action by councillors, the council itself or council staff, to an independent broad-based anti-corruption commission known as IBAC, the Ombudsman or a nominated council staff, in this case, Mr. Costa. It's really important that we have this mechanism. This is the way that if you see our parking inspector letting their mate off a parking fine, then there's a process that you can report that and it'll be taken seriously. This is the process that if you think the council is acting in a corrupt manner or not doing what it should be doing, there is a process where you're legally protected to bring those issues to an independent body. This is an important function that keeps us and the processes that we govern honest and accountable. So I commend it.
Yeah, thanks, Councillor. Good words, well said. Councillor Greason, did you want to add anything?
Yes, thank you. I agree with Councillor Crook's summary of that. I think this is a very important policy. I think it will protect people who do observe misdemeanours of any sort and wish to follow through, but it'll also block people making frivolous complaints against someone or something that's happening. So I think it's excellent. Thank you.
Thanks, Councillor. Good words indeed. Councillors, is the motion opposed? It looks like it isn't. Would anybody else like to speak to the motion? We're a very quiet group of councillors tonight. In that case, councillors, I'll put the motion to the vote. All those in favour? I can see all hands now. Can you, CEO? Thank you. The motion's carried unanimously. Thanks, councillors. Moving on to item 5.2.2, the councillor support and expense policy. Excuse me, let me just scroll down. I'm operating a couple of screens here. It's the new world, isn't it? So, councillors, Mr. Cannizzaro, is this you again?
It is.
Thank you. Pleasure. Take it away.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. Councillors, before you is a report titled the Councillor Support and Expenses Policy, which we're seeking adoption of a revised draft policy in line with the requirements to support councillors and also in terms of providing reimbursement of out-of-pocket expenses that have been incurred in performance of your duties in accordance with the Local Government Act 2020. So the key points for council to consider tonight are the policy has been reviewed in light of and updated to reflect the best practice guidance identified by the Local Government Inspectorate review of councillor support and expenses Some of the changes made to the policy include separation of childcare and care expense to improve understanding of those expenses, limits for reimbursement for accommodation, meals and personal vehicle expenses linked to the Australian Taxation Office taxation determination, quarterly reporting on councillor expenditure to our Audit and Risk Committee, and that would be available on our website. Also, a two-step approval process for reimbursement of out-of-pocket expenses has also been included. Also reflected in the policy is training for councillors in regards to the policy. And last but not least, vehicle options for councillors. Tonight also with me is the Manager Governance, Bojane Da Costa, and Manager of Works, Tom Weatherall, who are both available to respond to any questions of a technical nature. The report is presented for your consideration. Thank you, Deputy Mayor.
Thanks, Mr. Canizzaro. And here is the opportunity for any questions or clarifications, and those that policy and a marked up version is of course provided for us. Councillors, are there any questions? Clarifications? Councillor White, go ahead, please.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. Mr. Canizzaro, we discussed vehicle usage earlier today. Now, page 123 of the report, item 2, does that get around the problem that I was discussing around about, you know, actually being allocated a vehicle with no private use? Could you please clarify that? Because in our discussion, you also said in this paper that the discretionary powers of the CEO had been altered from previously.
Yes, so to just be clear on that, so the current policy, so not this draft policy that's before you, there was a clause in that current policy that refers to referral to the Chief Executive Officer for any reimbursement of any expense that was not included in the policy. So that was a line in the current, or is a line in the current policy. That in and of itself would require a councillor to submit a request to the Chief Executive Officer that might have been outside of the current policy, and that would then need to be assessed, and that assessment would be made, and it would either be a yes, that is eligible for reimbursement, or no, it's not eligible for reimbursement. So that's in the current policy. In the draft policy, that wording has been, if you like, tightened somewhat in terms of the policy is the guidance and has included all of the elements for reimbursement that therefore takes away that that request to the CEO to make that discretionary approval or disapproval. So I hope that's answered your question, Councillor White.
Well, thank you. But so therefore, item 2 is something new and would be valid. Is that what you're saying? Point 2 on page 123.
The option.
So this is the councillor vehicle options.
Yeah, that's. I'm going to have, unless yes, Tom Weatherall's there, I'm going to have to defer to Tom if he's available.
Just Tom is online, so.
Thank you. Through you, Mr. Deputy Mayor.
Thanks, Mr. Weatherall.
Councillor White, yes, option 2. So there is an option within the draft policy before council this evening to allocate a vehicle to councillors for councillor use only, so excluding any private use. In instances where that allocation would provide best value for money. So that would be in instances where you know, an individual councillor's location is not in ready proximity to a council pool fleet car, as an example. So really looking at the situations of more remote councillors, and in those instances, if those councillors did not opt for the private use option, including a contribution for that private use, they could consider the allocation of a vehicle for councillor use only. I hope that answers the question, Councillor White.
Thank you, Tom. I do. It's answered a query. I just hope that it just suits the requirement. Thank you.
Thanks, Councillor White. Thanks, Tom, for that. Councillor Buckley, you've got a question there.
Yes, Mr. Cannizzaro, I just wanted to confirm that this policy is set up specifically to ensure that councillors' out-of-pocket expenses are met. Is that correct?
For those that are listed within the policy, that's correct.
Thank you.
Thanks, Mr. Cannizzaro, and that I think is a good change from the previous policy, because it's quite clear the transparency is much better rather than that discretionary application in the last policy.
Yes.
Councillors, are there any other questions? Councillor Crook, go ahead.
Thank you. Mr. Cannizzaro, is it the case that councillors are still able to make application via the CEO for an expense in fulfilling our duties to be met that isn't otherwise covered in the policy?
I'm going to refer to Manager Governance Bojane DaCosta, who can guide us on that one, Councillor Crook.
Thank you.
Sure, no worries. And thank you for the question, Councillor Crook. Absolutely. So the way that it is structured is that this is a policy adopted by council, and as such, everything that is identified in this policy is covered, and it provides for that very clear understanding of what's reimbursed. However, if for some reason something occurs and it is not captured in this policy, then there is the discretion for the CEO.
Thank you.
Great. It's reassuring. Thanks, Councillor Crook, for your question.
Specifically listed, Mr. Chair,
Yes.
on page 134 of, or page 7 of the policy. Very specific.
Just check that, councillors. Very good. Thanks. CEO, that's great. Just take a moment if councillors wanted to cast their eye over that and just to seek that clarification. Are there any other questions of officers, councillors? I can't see any, even with the delay in but there's a recommendation in front of us, councillors. Do we have a motion? Councillor Allen, thank you. Councillor Greason, I can't see some of the other councillors, they're off screen, so if you're waving, that's okay. So Councillor Allen, did you want to speak to the motion?
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. Look, this policy's been in the making for considerable time, and I think it's an important one for us as councillors to understand fully what's expenses are covered and what's not. And I'm very pleased to see that we've finally got it to this point, and I strongly recommend its adoption.
Yeah, thanks, Councillor Allen. Councillor Greason, do you want to speak to the motion?
No, I have nothing to add. Thank you.
Thanks, Councillor. Is the motion opposed? Councillor Buckley?
Oh, no, sorry. That was just a bit too early.
It's all right. I thought we were going to have a debate there. That would have been very exciting. Okay, thank you. Is the motion opposed? I'll ask again, just for clarity. It doesn't look like it's opposed.
May I ask a question, Deputy Mayor?
Yes, look, we're in process, but I think we can allow that, Councillor Buckley. Clarification.
To Mr. Costa, when would I propose an amendment to the motion?
You can propose an amendment as soon as you put your hand up to ask a question. For or against, it doesn't really matter. when the floor is open to you, you can propose the amendment.
So not yet?
You can propose it now if Councillor Reeves is happy to provide that, yes.
Yeah.
So-
Okay.
So,
Um,
Councillor Buckley, do you have an amendment that you'd like to propose?
I would like to propose an amendment to the motion, Deputy Mayor. I propose the alternate motion that Council receives and notes this report and all attachments pertaining to this report, and 2, adopts the draft councillor support and expenses policy as provided as attachment 1 with the following amendment to the policy. A, the reimbursement for use of privately owned owned vehicles is set at a rate calculated from the annual RACV vehicle running costs report for specific motor vehicle types based on a cents per kilometre method and adjusted annually based on any updates to the RACV vehicle running costs report, page 6 of the policy.
Thanks, Councillor Buckley. So page 6 of the policy, that amendment, just to seek clarification, pardon me, so that we're all on the same page, is to replace the reference to the ATO tax rate for vehicles to effectively the RACV rate. Thanks, Councillor Buckley. Is the motion seconded? Sorry, the amendment seconded. Mr. Costa? Yeah.
So it will go back to the original mover and seconder to confirm if they're happy with that amendment.
Okay, so that goes back to Councillor Allen.
Good question. Look, it's, you know, ATO, RACV, as long as we're not creating a precedent for other councils, or in law, as long as we're in line with other councils, yeah. But I'd hate to think that we're going to be out of step with what other councils do.
Sorry, was that a yes or is it accepted or not, Councillor Allen?
Or I will accept it, yeah.
And do we need the seconder to accept it as well, Mr. Costa?
Yes.
So, Councillor Greason?
No, I don't support it because I think that it is not consistent with the way most of the other councils, or if all, and perhaps that could be clarified, whether there are other councils that use the RACV rate. I also think it's significantly more expensive to ratepayers than the ATO rates. So I don't support it. Thank you.
So, Mr. Costa, are we in debate now?
No, so now you need to ask for a seconder for Councillor Buckley's amendment.
Thank you for your guidance. Is there a seconder for the amendment? Can't see anyone, Councillor Buckley. I'm sorry. It looks like that means the amendment. Councillor White. Councillor White has popped in. Thank you. Sorry, John. Just okay.
You're on mute, John.
Now we'll revert back to Councillor Buckley to talk to her motion.
Okay,
Okay,
you can talk to the motion now. Thanks, Mr. Costa, for the guidance here.
Thank you, Mr. Costa. Through you, Deputy Mayor.
Yep.
I do acknowledge Councillor Greason's concerns, but I think they're not based on the fact that it's in fact a cost-saving measure to be able to have councillors to make the choice to use their own personal vehicles, especially in these times where lots of our meetings are conducted online. I certainly know that my travelling is a lot less than what my father's tenure was. And that if we really wanted to save ratepayers money, we would accept that as before Mr. Canizzaro was clear in that this policy should reflect the the expenses out of pocket for councillors, and that's what this amendment will do. It will ensure that if a councillor makes the choice not to take the ratepayers' monies and spend it on a car bought for them by council, and decides to do the right thing by ratepayers and buy their own car and become more responsible for using their own car, they should be at least, councillors, they should be least reimbursed for out-of-pocket expenses. And in this case, the ATO does not cover those costs. If you had a vehicle that's larger than a medium-sized car, it would not cover the council's expenses. So I think it's fair and reasonable for this amendment, and I would really like the other councillors' support to ensure that if people are prepared to use their own car to work for their constituents, that they get reimbursed. It's just a very, very decent proposal. So I would like your support in this amendment. Thank you.
Thanks, Councillor Buckley. So the seconder, would you like to speak to this now?
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. I just, in terms of the amount the ATO versus the RACV, what we see at the moment, and it's most important for people who are going to perhaps use their own vehicle and travel long distances, we are at the absolute high end of fuel prices, and they don't appear to be coming down anytime soon. So I think there's a lag period in the ATO's valuations on a kilometre basis, and it's particularly to do with fuel. And I think that it's, we don't want to be taking from the ratepayers anything that shouldn't be reimbursed, but I think we also deserve to actually cover costs. Thank you.
Thanks, Councillor White. So I believe now we're at the place where we ask if the motion is opposed. Councillor Crook, are you? No? I just saw something flashing there.
Yeah, sure.
Oh, I didn't mean to preempt that. You were on my screen flashing.
Yes, look, I oppose the amendment. I think it applies to Councillor Allen's concerns that we'd be out of step with what all the other councils, to my knowledge, are doing. All the other councils, as far as I understand, are sticking with the Australian Taxation Office rate rather than the RAC rate. It's a government standard. We're a government entity. I think it's only reasonable that we stay in line with other government entities that are equivalent to our organisation. No one's supposing that we should shortchange anybody on reimbursing them for vehicles. We have a fairly clear policy where councillors are able to access a Shire vehicle if need be, and use that for personal use if they like at an expense, or otherwise to use their own vehicle and be reimbursed for the cost of doing that. Now, I choose to have a smaller car, so those costs are minimised. If other councillors wish to drive a larger car or feel the need to, then I don't think the ratepayers should be paying for that. I think we should stick with the ATO rate.
Thanks, Councillor Crook. Councillor Buckley, I can see you've got your hand up, but we're in debate and you'll have a right of reply in a moment. So hang in there. So Councillor Crook has spoken against it. Would anybody else like to speak for the motion? Anybody speak against the motion?
Sorry, Mark, I had my hand up. I don't know if you can see me.
No, I can't. Sorry, Councillor Van Diegel, go ahead.
That's right. I'm going to support Sonia's motion for the sense that we have a very different terrain than many other councils, and I think we need to acknowledge that Sonia does live in the high country, and if she should want a car that serves her in the high country, then the least we can do for the limited travel she will do, given we are living in COVID times, she's agreed to come to Bairnsdale when we have council meetings. The last thing that I would want for anyone, especially hardworking councillors who, in all fairness, for the work we are asked to put in, the payment can be relatively tokenistic. So if Sonia is choosing to not get a councillor vehicle, which already is a huge expense saved, then I don't think it's too much to ask to reimburse the cost. I acknowledge what you're saying, Councillor Crook, but you also live in Eagle Point. You don't live in the high country where you might need a larger four-wheel drive for your day-to-day work. And if Sonia doesn't choose to have a councillor vehicle and it's a larger vehicle that she wishes to choose, then the last thing that I would want is for her not to be able to get reimbursed accurately. I feel like it's only fair. All of us councillors put in a lot of hard work, and if that's what Sonia feels like she needs in order to be an effective councillor, then I'm happy to support the motion.
Thanks, Councillor Van Diggle. I wonder if Mr. Costa has a comment there. There's procedural matter that you wanted to add. Thank you.
Sorry, yes, just in relation to the right of reply, a motion that has been amended doesn't actually have a right of reply.
Okay, thank you for that clarification. Sorry, Councillor Buckley. Councillors, any other speakers for or against the motion? This is the amendment at this stage. If that's the case, then I will put the motion to the vote. All those in favour? I can't.
Are we voting on the alternative motion by Sonia? Sorry.
This is the amendment. Yes. I can't see everybody, so I'm hoping for Mr. Costa to be able to see that. I can see Councillor White, Councillor Buckley, Councillor Van Diggle. Can't see anybody else at this stage.
That's all.
Councillor Stowe appears to be off camera.
Well, this Councillor Stowe is still there.
Yep.
So those against? I can't see Councillor Stowe. If he can speak, you need to have your microphone on, Councillor Stowe, so that you will actually be visible.
I'm here. What would you like me to do?
We're
There's my hand. Can you see my hand now?
against the hand. I can see your hand now.
Yep.
Sorry for the delay in the procedural matters here, councillors. So it looks like the amendment is lost. Did you count those who voted for and against their CEO?
Yes, I did.
Okay, thank you.
5 against and 3 for.
Thanks, councillor. So the amendment is lost, which means we revert to the original motion, and that was moved by Councillor Allen and seconded by Councillor Greason. And now we've spoken to those motions, so we're at the process where we're voting on the original motion now, I think. So, councillors, I put the original motion to the vote. All those in favour? One, 2, 3, 4, 5. Those against? 3 against. The original motion is carried. Thanks, councillors. Thanks for your patience in that process as well, and thanks for your contributions. Councillors, we're moving on to item 5.2.3, which is the Paynesville Community Craft Centre lease. And I suspect we will have an officer to join us, and I'm sorry on the delay here. And that will be, is that Ms. Weigel this time?
No, that's
Mr.
me,
Cannizzaro,
Deputy Mayor,
sorry.
yes.
Sorry, councillors, it is a bit hard with the moving tiles of faces and working out who's going to pop up. So, Mr. Cannizzaro, go ahead. Thank you.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. Councillors, before you is a report seeking Council's approval to grant a lease agreement for a further term of 4 years to the Paynesville Community Craft Centre Incorporated for the ongoing operation. To set the scene, the Paynesville Community Craft Centre has been operating from the premises at 7 Sunset Drive in Paynesville for over 40 years. You will note an image at attachment 1 in terms of their location. The lease expired on the 30th of June 2021. This report is proposing a delay to the requirement of a competitive expression of interest process and to enter into a further lease agreement for a 4-year term with the Paynesville Community Craft Centre. This will allow additional time for council officers to finalised the design work for the existing building and its eventual upgrade. Due to the summer bushfires of 2019 and 20, and then obviously COVID over the last 18 or so months, and council officers and teams working on other priorities, council has not been in a position to undertake that design work and obviously the community consultation for the proposed works for the Progress Jetty. So following the completion of that works down the line, council will be in a position to undertake an expression of interest for the future use of those premises. And of course, the Paynesville Community Craft Centre may, at that point in time, if they wish to, also submit an expression of interest. Tonight with me is the Manager Governance, Bojane Da Costa, who is available to respond to any questions you have that of a technical nature. So the report and recommendation is presented to you, councillors. Thank you, Deputy Mayor.
Thanks, Mr. Cannizzaro. And indeed, councillors, here is an opportunity for any questions or clarifications from officers. Well, once again, oh no, thank you, Councillor Crook. Question.
Thanks, Councillor Reeve and Mr. Cannizzaro. So in effect, the existing arrangements would stay in place?
They would.
And the decision would be defaulted to the next council term, which may not in fact be ourselves.
Thank you, Councillor Crook. That's correct.
Thank you.
Councillor Stone.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. Could I just ask how important this facility is to the local community? Is it well used?
Thank you, Councillor Stowe, through you, Deputy Mayor. It is well used. It's been there for 40 odd years, and it's one of the heartbeats of Paynesville. I would call it.
Thank you.
I think, Councillor Stowe, its location, it's the building, and what goes on there is an icon of Paynesville and a real absolutely essential. So I wish you to preempt anything that's going to happen in a moment, but that would be my opinion and my takeaway from it. Are there any other questions, councillors? Thanks, councillors. Well, in that case, there is a recommendation in front of us. Do I have a motion? Councillor White has leapt and Councillor Crook as well. Councillor White, would you like to speak?
Thank you. I had my hand on the buzzer. I was desperate to move this. I've met several times and been involved with these this group of volunteers, that I'll call them, community-minded people. They do an amazing job there, absolutely amazing, and I'm so pleased that they are being offered another 4 years of that lease, because everything that they make is returned to the community in some form or another, to things like the kindergarten, the fire brigade, the Maritime Museum, all the things around Paynesville that are so dear to the community. This group of people donate everything that they earn, and it's so much of it is homemade, like you just sample their jams and things like that if you go and pay them a visit. So I just highly recommend this, and I thank Mr. Cannizzaro for coming through with the lease for them, and Mr. Costa. I think that's a great effort. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks, Councillor White. It's, good words and well said. Councillor Crook.
Yes, thank you. Look, just to re-endorse what John said, it's a great spot. It's really enjoyed and celebrated by the community. It's great that we have the opportunity to support such a little hive of activity. And look, there's not a better place to buy a homemade jam or a reusable dish scratchy, I don't think, in East Gippsland. So I've been there a few times, and look, like I said, it's a hive of activity. So I commend the motion.
Thanks, Councillor Cook. I'm hoping that the motion isn't opposed, but there is an option there if it is. Would anybody else like to speak for or against the motion, or in support of it in that case? Councillors, I might just add that I think at this particular time in our Shire's history, when it has been battered and beaten by drought and fire and flood and COVID, I think anything we can do to reach out to support our community organisations and to ease their continued operation in supporting our communities is something that is the least we can do. And this is, I think, on this occasion, the right thing to do at the right time. Thanks, councillors. We'll put the motion to the vote. All those in favour? Thanks, councillors. Those carried unanimously. I was going to say those against, but clearly there isn't any opposition. Councillors, we're moving on to item 5.3, place and community, and this is item 5.3.1, and it's a planning matter, 156/2021 100 Kings Cove Boulevard, Meetung. And I think the first thing we need to do is to invite Mr. Hoxley. I believe that's where we're going with this now. And Mr. Hoxley will be invited into the chamber, the virtual chamber, to speak to this matter. Are you there, Mr. Hoxley?
Deputy Mayor, I am here. Thank you very much.
Terrific. Welcome. Good to see you.
Thank you.
Thanks for being here tonight. The floor is yours, sir.
Thank you very much. Deputy Mayor, councillors, I appreciate the opportunity to speak for you this evening on this matter. Before you on the upcoming matter is a recommendation by council officers to refuse an application for a subdivision in Kings Cove for the creation of 12 residential allotments. We're somewhat disappointed by the recommendation that's been prepared. We believe it is an appropriate response to the size and configuration of the lot and its location. And there are a number of grounds for refusal that I would like to refute this evening, and perhaps put you in a more clearer picture in terms of the context of Kings Cove. It's a precinct that has varying planning controls across different parts. And for those that are not necessarily familiar in detail with planning, it can be quite complex, as I'm sure you're becoming more and more aware. But it's important in this instance to consider Kings Cove in its entirety as an estate and not just limit the consideration of this application to a plan that is nearing 20 years old since its adoption. And we're by way of the incorporated plan in the schedule, the authorised incorporated plan from Amendment C2, June 2000. There have been many variations with planning approval through the life of the development, if you like, of this estate. And I draw your attention to streets including the fields, the stockyard. They are very, very different layouts, considerable to, quite significantly different, albeit in the same proximity, but in terms of a lot layout, somewhat different to the original incorporated plan. The incorporated plan is pretty simplistic in many respects. And as developments are refined through the course of time, if you like, or in the life of development, these things can vary quite differently, particularly when they relate to physical features on the ground and servicing. So the fields, the stockyards, they're two examples on the southern side, if you like, or to the south of Kings Cove Boulevard. And I would refer you specifically to page 173 of the report, where there's a comparison of the current layout of Kings Cove versus the incorporated plan. Further, Kempton Grove and Besley Close to the north, which occupy what we known as the North Course development, but it's immediately adjacent to Hardy's Road. Again, lots there of 2,000 square metres. So we have, again, through the course of the development of this estate, changes to planning controls, particularly in the low density residential zone that were made in 2013, could never have been conceived at the time that this plan was incorporated. The significance in that provision, as made by the Minister for Planning at the time, was in relation to reducing the minimum lot size in the low density residential zone to 2,000 square metres where reticulated sewer was available. It was recognised at that time that the availability of services should not be underutilised, and in fact the communities should make the most of a finite resource known as, or what we refer to as, serviced residential land. So it could never have conceived at the time of the adoption of the incorporated plan that such a decision would be made, and it's a significant one. But more significantly than that, arguably, is the varying controls through schedules under different provisions of the East Gippsland planning scheme that equally result in a diversity of lot sizes throughout the estate. The plateau has lots that's between 750 square metres and 1,350 square metres. They're in the range of lot sizes that you would typically expect these days, if you like, in a general residential zone, in town, if you like. The habitat has lots between 715 square metres and 1,200 square metres as an approximate, approximately. The sanctuary, again, 550 square metres to 1,100 or 1,100 square metres, quarter acre blocks and half of that as well. So when you put the context of 2,000 square metre allotments plus with this proposed subdivision, we are very much in the mix, or it is, not we. The proposal is very much in the mix in the diversity of lot sizes and the opportunities afforded throughout the estate for a diversity of housing and lifestyle. Barham Chase, again, 700 square metres to 1,300 square metre lot sizes. And there remains under the schedules another 80 lot entitlements throughout the estate that are on parcels outside of the incorporated plan. And it's possible that even the adjoining property to the southern side of this application could support as much as one scheme, anywhere between 30 and 40 lots. And a planning permit's not required by virtue of the schedules contained within the planning scheme. So this estate is unique. It provides for a diversity of housing by virtue of a diversity of lot sizes and lot configurations. It is absolutely diverse. So to suggest that suddenly this proposal is out of step is not taking into account all of Kings Cove. If we want to consider neighbourhood character...
Mr Hoxley, sorry to interrupt you. That's more than 5 minutes. So if you could just sum up, please, for the benefit of everyone, please.
All right. Thank you, Deputy Mayor. So I guess in conclusion, we put it that the design of the subdivision and layout is very much in keeping with the incorporated plan, the provisions of the zone. It's in keeping with the character of the area, and it is certainly in keeping with the environs of Meetung and this estate. Some vegetation may be impacted. It's all planted. It is exempt from requiring approvals for removal, but in the same manner as has evolved in this estate, some vegetation is lost for dwellings, but others is retained. But it is very much a man-made, we'll say, environment or synthetic environment, and not one that is like anywhere else throughout the Meetung precinct. So I appreciate your time this evening and look forward to a healthy debate.
Good. Thanks, Mr Hoxley. Councillors, I can see the switchboard is lit up, but I don't think there's provision to be asking questions of the presenter. Is that correct? I'll just seek clarification, which is probably where councillors are going at the moment.
There can be questions of clarification if required.
Thanks. In that case, then, Councillor Stowe, do you have a question of Mr Hoxley?
I've got two, if you don't mind.
Thanks, go ahead.
The first one is, could you just explain to me why we've got battle axe blocks and why we don't have a second street?
Well, can you hear me? Did I turn off the speaker? Yeah, no, sorry, I thought I might have turned my mic off temporarily. It very much comes down to affordability in delivering a product, and it needs to be, there's a balance that is often needing to be made between the cost of servicing and the utilisation of existing services. Why build a road if there's a perfectly good road available? And for every lineal metre of road, that's a further ongoing maintenance cost to council and other service authorities. We're better to get the most out of the infrastructure that currently exists without having to impose that expense and ongoing liability forward for future generations. But it's also a matter of landform. Is there the necessity for a road? The layout offers instead a diversity of lot sizes but one equal to, and battle axe blocks, if you like, or those sequestered lots, as you've questioned, Councillor Stowe, are prevalent throughout Kings Cove already.
The second question is about fire service. Sorry. It's about fire service. Could you explain to me what's going to happen with regards to fire services for these blocks?
Yes, Councillor Stowe. It's certainly a consideration from a council perspective, albeit not directly under the planning provisions. But obviously we need to ensure that communities are protected. So in this instance, there's the ability to extend fire services from the opposite side of Kings Cove Boulevard to provide the adequate coverage to, certainly existing services will cover all of the front lots, if you like, not the battle axe blocks. But with additional services that can be provided, either reticulated, they can also cover some of the sequestered lots. But equally, we've put forward a suggestion similar to that in other, both rural areas, rural residential areas and bushfire areas, whereby the sequestered lots can also be afforded or provided with a static water supply with CFA compatibility in terms of couplings and connections. And that's very, very common for residential lots over 1,000 square metres in residential areas in a bushfire management overlay. So the proposal or the response is consistent with services that are otherwise imposed throughout our settlements.
Thanks, Richard. Thanks, Councillor Stowe. Councillor White.
Thank you, Councillor Reeves. Richard, there's been a bit of discussion around the loss of trees, and as you've quite rightly said, they are actually planted trees. My question to you is that these allotment sizes are certainly not going to be taken up totally by houses and outbuildings. So would you agree that the actual gardens and tree plantings of people who build there would actually way exceed the few trees that might be removed?
Councillor White, I'd certainly expect, as we've already seen throughout the estate, where the initial plantings were done adjacent to the golf course and surrounds, where very selective removal has occurred for dwellings, and people have retained vegetation where it otherwise isn't impeding their abilities to build a house or supporting outbuildings. We refer to something as we see areas of low density residential land developed and rural living is the greening phenomena. If anything, people will plant more as they establish their house than they will otherwise remove. And you can see that in a number of areas, Nicholson, Swanreach and the like. If you look at a time lapse of aerial photography, people will be planting trees, not taking them out.
Thanks, Richard. Councillor Buckley, go ahead. So you're just muted at the moment, Sonia.
Sorry. It's a question not to Richard, but to the officers. Are we up to that yet?
Not quite. So hold your horses and you can be first in line then.
Okay, thanks.
If there's no more questions of Mr. Hoxley, then we'll thank him for joining us tonight.
Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. There's just one last point, I suppose. It's interesting that the community hasn't responded on this application, which I believe can be seen as acceptance of the proposal in keeping with the area, given that Meton and you've seen other applications in Kings Cove responded to quite strongly by the community. So I think that's testament to the proposal as well and the acceptance of it by the community. Thank you for your time.
Yeah, well done. You got that last pitch in. Excellent. Good for you. Thanks, Richard. Okay.
Thank you.
So CEO, would we be waiting for Richard to leave or he's gone? Okay. Thanks, councillors. So
I believe Richard's still in the room, Mark. Oh, leaving now. Sorry.
I don't think so. Thank you for that. So Stuart, is this over to you now?
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. Councillors, before you is a report regarding the planning permit application for a 12-lot subdivision at 100 Kings Cove Boulevard in Meetham, where the officer recommendation is to issue a notice to refuse the planning permit application. Some of the key points to bring to your attention, firstly, that the application was made by the normal process and was subject to public notifications and a sign of via letters and a sign on site. And as was mentioned by Mr Hawkes, there were no objections received. I would note that the Kings Cove area in general is an area in which there's significant planning provisions in place designed to support the character and livability of this area, and that officers consider that this proposal to create lots down to 2,000 square metres where the remainder of the street has lots with a full frontage to the road and are 4,000 square metres and larger is contrary to the plan, the incorporated plan, and would result in significant detriment to the neighbourhood character and in effect the livability. Further, the use of battle axe blocks or a battle axe configuration of lots interrupts the streetscape and also results in a less ideal planning outcome in terms of livability, and that could be resolved as was inferred in the discussion with a different layout that includes an additional road. I might note just I just observed that one of the other areas of development, the North Course area, had similar challenges in its development, and that was resolved by the installation of or the inclusion of a road that provides full frontage access to the blocks, and noting the smaller lot size in that area. Further, the neighbourhood character needs to be assessed in consideration of the planning scheme and controls which apply to the subject land. There was reference in the discussion to controls on an adjoining piece of land, which provide for higher density of subdivision and dwelling development. But it's not the planning controls on the adjacent land that matter. It's the planning controls on the land that is the subject of this application that we need to consider. There was also discussion, obviously, around the development and the provision of on-site fire protection. The proposal that was put forward, in effect, is a bespoke condition that is quite uncommon in areas that have reticulated water supply. So yes, it is used in other places, but not generally where you have reticulated water supply. And the issue is in relation to the provision of hydrants, which, due to the depth of the lots, means the distance from the hydrant, from a street-located hydrant to the areas that need to be accessed is too large. It suggested that an alternative approach using on-site water supply be used at the landowner's expense and maintenance. And there's a need for further consideration there about the practicality of that and the effect to which that can be implemented, and the obligations that places on developer, on landowners, and in fact on council to ensure future compliance with the maintenance, etc., of those water tanks. With me this evening is Mr. Robert Pringle, the Statutory Planning Coordinator, and Nicole Reynolds, the Acting Manager of Planning, and they can assist if there are further questions that you may have in relation to this matter. The report's presented for your consideration.
Thanks, Mr McConnell. And councillors, this is the opportunity to ask those questions. And Councillor Buckley, you jumped the gun a bit earlier, so I'll give you the first go.
Look, a lot of my questions have already been answered in the meanwhile, but just to go over them, it's clear that there's been no objections in the community in regards to this planning application. That seems to me a fairly clear result that the community may very well support this application, considering that we have a shortage of houses in East Gippsland. I think that we should be looking to support.
Councillor Buckley, this is a chance for questions, and that would be something good to talk to when
Sure.
the motion is put.
Sure. Just the question in regards to the officers is this land can be sewered And I'm under the understanding that the minimum lot size for that zone is 2,000 square metres. Is that correct? And if that's the case, wouldn't that be the opportunity to maximise the use of the appropriate serviced and zoned land?
So I might ask Mr. Pringle to respond to that question, but I would note that officers are not opposing development of this land for residential purposes. It is the specific layout and arrangements that have been proposed that have led to the officer's recommendation. So, and I might ask Mr. Pringle to respond to the specifics of your question.
Yeah, thanks, Mr. Pringle. Welcome, and Councillor White, I see you with a question. So, go ahead, Robert.
Thank you, Councillor Buckley, and through you, Deputy Mayor. Yes, Councillor Buckley, the provision in the low-density residential zone is that sewered lots can be subdivided down to 2,000 square metres. However, we're basing our assessment on the neighbourhood character, and the established neighbourhood character is lots, particularly lots adjacent or opposite, are 4,000 square metres and above. And that is the basis of our recommendation.
Thanks, Mr. Pringle.
Thank you.
Councillor White, go ahead.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. My question probably would be straight to you, Robert. It's hard. I can't share a screen here, so I have to go back to the agenda. I'm on page 173. Is it an optical illusion, but directly opposite those blocks, they don't appear to be double the size on Kings Cove Boulevard, and also from my recollection of the road, right next door to this proposed subdivision, don't the blocks drop down to around about 700 square metres?
Thank you, Councillor White, and through you, Deputy Mayor. I would suggest that there is probably a little bit of an optical illusion in that, based on the alignment of the lots, and look, that figure 3 that you were referencing does show the proposed layout with lots, I would say, not necessarily half, but pretty close to half the size, and there are larger lots in the sequestered lots which are quite close to that 4,000 square meters, and again that's based on the access and the you know, sort of the battle axe handle and the larger area at the rear. In terms of the second part, you'll see a line in that figure, and again in figure 4, which clearly separates this area of Kings Cove Estate from the southern area, so the land immediately adjacent, which falls under that separate planning control, which is an incorporated plan for a resort and convention center. In that approval in the planning scheme, there is allowance for townhomes and units and apartments and the like, and that allows a higher density of development under that particular schedule. And the point that officers are trying to make here is that there is a clear planning scheme provision difference between land that we're considering today and land that is to the immediate south. There are different controls which apply. There is a different outcome that is anticipated for these lots. What we are trying to draw a comparison to is the land that is along the extent from Hardy's Road through to this site, where the lot sizes are the 4,000 square meters and more, and predominantly have direct street frontage. We'll concede that the Hardy's Road and North Course area was done differently, and again reiterate Mr. McConnell's point that there was a road provided to those lots.
Yeah, that was going to be sort of part of the next question, was why was the subdivision to the north off Hardy's Road, they look like they're just a residential block. very small ones. Why would that section have been given a different zoning again? It's only across the golf course.
Thank you, Councillor White. And I can only speculate, because I wasn't in council at the time, that the determination was made to make that subdivision happen in that regard. But again, if you look at figure 4, you'll see a number of lots, again, 4,000 square meters and greater, where predominantly the access is taken directly off Hardy's Road or by small service lanes. That would have required additional vegetation removal and additional, additional driveways into that Hardy's Road, which also services the Tambo Bluff estate further to the west. All told, when the proposal was made in a timely manner after the amendment to the planning scheme, which provided for lots down to 2,000 square meters, and all of those would be 2,000 square meters and greater, it was considered appropriate to provide for a roadway connection and smaller lot sizes. And we would say that the golf course is an intervening development which does provide a distinct character between the North Course and the area that's already established on Kings Cove Boulevard.
Thanks, Councillor Light. Are you done with your questions?
Yes, I was just about to thank Robert for his answers. Thank you.
Good on you. Thanks, Robert. Councillor Greason.
Thank you very much, Deputy Mayor. Robert, I'm moving between pages 172 and 173. No, there's the photo in between. I'm a bit 100. Oh yes, so that there's it looks like an actual satellite photo with roads superimposed on 172. The land below the proposed development and that swings around to the north and northwest. Is that, can you clarify, is that all golf course, or is that also land that may very well be developed in the future?
Thank you, Councillor Greason, and through you, Deputy Mayor. The land immediately to the south and west, where you'll see on figure 1 that there is a roundabout at Storthorise Avenue and Kings Cove Boulevard, is land that is incorporated within the incorporated plan. And as Mr. Hawksley alluded to, a proposal for 30 to 40 lots is likely. And I would suggest that it's also on the market. And again, the provision in the planning scheme is that at some point, council will receive a set of subdivision plans for endorsement. It is not a planning permit application that gets made publicly. It is essentially a set of conditional plans under that incorporated document. The land to the north and west is by and large a part of the golf course, and it would not likely be developed.
Okay, thank you. So the land that is likely to be developed is there are clearly going to have to be roads built. Is that going to go anywhere near this current proposed development that we're looking at now?
Thank you, Councillor, for your question. I've seen a draft of the proposal. It is advertised online publicly for sale. There is roadways provisioned roughly in a loop. Now that is obviously subject to change based on market demand. However, it is possible that a roadway connection could be made into the land that we are talking about today.
Thank you very much.
Thanks, Councillor Greason. Are there any other questions of officers, councillors? Councillors, in that case, we have a recommendation in front of us. Do I have a motion? Councillor Greason. Thank you. Do I have a seconder? I'm just going to seek clarification from Mr. Costa whether I can second this. I'm not sure that the chair can.
The chair can second a motion. It's unusual, but it is able to be done.
Okay, well, I will second the motion to get this up and running then. Councillor Greason, would you like to speak to the motion?
Thank you very much, Deputy Mayor. I do support the officer's opinion about this. I don't oppose developing the area at all. It's clearly going to be developed, and a lot more than this small proposal we've got, or reasonably small proposal we've got in front of us. But I do think it makes much more sense for me to have a road, to have road frontage for each of the blocks proposed. I think in the future that is going to be the way this evolves anyway, that there will be roads there. I understand Richard Hoxley's explanation about why not do it now, but it's about affordability. And that's not ever really been a reason for supporting a planning proposal. So on that basis, I do support the officer's motion recommendation. Thanks.
Thanks, Councillor Greason. I won't speak to the motion. I think the points have been made by the officers. So I'm going to move to ask if the motion is opposed. Councillor Stowe.
Thank you, Mark. Yes, look, I oppose the motion. I can't see a lot wrong with it. They're not tiny little blocks by any stretch of the imagination. They're 2,000 square metres plus. And if you have a look at the plan around that area, there's a lot of small blocks around there, and there's a lot of larger blocks too. These are largest to average size in comparison. There's been no objectors from the local community. Now, I think the last time we had about 40 objectors, so people aren't afraid to put their hand up down there, but they haven't put their hand up. And I would take that as a vote of support for this development. I think the fire services need to be sorted out, but overall, we need the land. Let's not make it any dearer than what it already is. I think that, well, I'm going to oppose the motion. I'm sorry.
Thanks, Councillor Stowe. Is there anybody who'd like to speak in favour of the motion? Anybody else like to speak against the motion in that case? Looks like Councillor White and then Councillor Allen. Councillor Greason, you've still got your hand up, so you will have a right of reply at some stage. Councillor White, go ahead.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. Look, as Councillor Stowe said, somebody recently tried to subdivide a 2,000 square metre block into two 1,000 square metre blocks, and the opposition was very strong against that. Now, the fact that there are no objectors to this, the fact that the blocks are still quite large, and just across we'll call it the fields, I think the road is called the fields, there are battle axe blocks already in place. So they've been from a previous portion of this estate being subdivided, and there are battle axe blocks there. And, you could go on at infinitum that there are battle axe blocks across the Shire in this larger residential blocks. And I don't have any opposition to them. And during the presentation at a briefing, there was discussion around dust on the driveways. Well, I've actually been for a drive and had a look at quite a few battle axe blocks, and I cannot see a problem with people having dust. The owners of the rear properties have laid down something substantial for their driveway, and as was spoken earlier, if this goes to having extra, roads put in specifically, then goodness knows how much those blocks will have to be put on the market for to recoup the costs. So I will oppose this as well. Thank you.
Thanks, Councillor White. Would anybody else like to speak either for or against the motion? Councillor Allen.
Thanks, Councillor Reeves. Look, I've read this report 3 or 4 times, and from the things that we were given today in the council's reports that come today are not consistent with what I've read in the notes provided. For example, in the notes, in the briefing notes, it said that there was in relation to drainage, that there had been a requirement for a drainage plan, but in relation to erosion, that there was no issues raised by the relevant authority, and yet today erosion is detailed as a major thing that has to be addressed. There is no objections, and in fact, when this first come to us, I drove out to inspect the area, and I come across a woman with her 3 little kids walking along who lived in the area, and I told her who I was and asked her her opinion, and she said that, why would you object? There is no reason to object. But what she did say, and this really concerns me, was that what she objected to was having to wait for 2 years to get building approval on a block that they own further up in King's Cove, and that in the meantime they've had to rent and go through the heartache. I just found the whole thing totally inconsistent, and I'm not prepared to vote for it as presented.
Thanks, Councillor Allen. Would anybody else like to speak either for or against the motion? Councillor Allen, your hand is still up, so thanks. In that case, Councillor Greason, I believe you have a right of reply. And your microphone is muted.
Thank you. This hasn't gone to the vote yet, so I'm just wondering, because there is many issues, I think, that the officers have raised about blocks, and I'm wondering whether Ms. Da Costa, you could probably advise whether it is appropriate now to recommend an amendment to the motion.
So just from a procedural perspective, from a right of reply,
Yes.
it's just you don't have to exercise a right of reply. You can just say no. Then it needs to be put to a vote because it has been moved and seconded. If it falls over, then an alternative can be proposed.
Yep. So we're just working our way through the flow chart.
Yes.
So Jane, if you don't want to reply, you don't have to.
No, I don't wish to take my right of reply. Take that right. Thanks.
Okay. So councillors, in that case, we're going to put the motion to the vote. All those in favour? Those against? And it looks like Councillor Crook, are you abstaining on voting? Correct. So did you count the votes there? So Councillor Gratian and Reeves in favour, Councillor White, Stowe, Buckley, Van Diggle, Allen against, Councillor Crook abstaining. The motion is lost. There's an opportunity, councillors, if there's an alternative. So Councillor Stowe. Councillor Greason, you've still got your hand up. So I'll just go to Councillor Stowe. Go ahead, Councillor Stowe.
I just wonder if it's appropriate for us to refer this back to the staff to have another look at it and come back to us in 3 weeks' time with an alternate motion.
So Councillor Stowe, are you proposing a deferral? Is that what we're asking for here?
Yes, and an alternate motion from the staff in 3 weeks' time. Is that the correct way to go?
I believe so. Is there? So that's. Is that seconded? I'm going to ask if that's seconded. Councillor Van Diggle is seconding that. I'm just going to check that we are procedurally correct here, Mr. Costa.
Yes.
Great. Okay. In which case, Trevor, would you like to speak to the motion then?
Look, I think this is a worthwhile project, and I think most of us, in fact, I think all of us want to see it go ahead in one form or another. And this will give the staff a chance to have a rethink, perhaps have a talk to the proponents, and to come up with something we can all live with.
Okay. So we're in an amendment or an alternative motion here. I presume we can just follow through the same procedures here. So, Councillor Van Diggle, did you wish to speak to it?
Yeah, I just want to second what Trevor said, and also acknowledging that Meetung is about to undergo a lot of growth, and I don't think that we could turn down a subdivision with this many houses being built, and the lot sizes still seem very reasonable. So I want to take the next 3 weeks to learn more and defer the matter.
Okay, thanks. Is the motion opposed? I suspect not, councillors. So in which case, the alternative motion to defer this for 3 weeks, is checking that we're procedurally correct here, and be brought back to council in 3 weeks' time, which means that I dare say councillors will need a briefing to us again before then with more information. So I'll put that motion to the vote. All those in favour? Those against? It looks like it's carried unanimously, Mr. CEO. So thanks, councillors, for that. Thanks for that procedural matter just then. And there is the alternative motion that we have just voted on. That the debate on this matter be deferred until 14th September for officers to further consider the recommendations proposed.
Very good.
Very good. Thanks, councillors. Now we are moving on to item 6. I don't think there's any any urgent or other business.
Correct.
Thank you. So we are now moving into the confidential section of the meeting. Sorry, I just need to get rid of that. Pardon me. So, Councillor Allen, are you?
Do you need a motion to move into confidential?
Yes, please.
Yeah, so I'll move that
Yes,
motion.
please.
Thanks, mate.
Thank you. Councillor Grayson has seconded. So now, do I need to read this, Mr. CEO, or I'll get Councillor Allen to read the motion?
Councillor Allen.
If you
Thanks,
could read it,
Councillor.
Mike,
Go ahead.
because
No.
I haven't got the right agenda.
The script in front of you.
Yes. I've been labouring under difficulties.
Okay, I'm happy to read it if that's going to be procedurally okay. So under section 66(2) of the Local Government Act 2020, meetings considering confidential information may be closed to the public. Pursuant to section 3(1) and 65(5) of the Local Government Act 2020, information contained in this report is confidential because it contains council business information, being information that would prejudice the council's position in delivery of services to the community, as it would prematurely disclose financial information. Councillors, there's a motion in front of us. I'll put the motion to the vote that we close the meeting because of going to into camera. All those in favour? Thank you. Those against? It's carried unanimously. So, CEO, we will close the meeting to the public now.
If we could just ask Jared to advise us, Chair, that
Well, thanks, councillors, and thanks community members and viewers who are looking on tonight. That concludes the council meeting of East Gippsland Shire on the 24th of August 2021. Thank you for joining us. Thank you, councillors, for your consideration and your work. And community members, please look after yourselves under these circumstances, and please be compliant with the COVID regulations to keep each other safe.